Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Coach Up webinar. We are very happy to see. Oh my God, there's already a lot of people getting connected on the chat on the webinar. I love it. So, yes, hello. If you want to say hi on the chat, tell us from where you're logging because we know that we have a lot of countries represented. So, which one is the most represented is the question that I'm wondering. If you want to say a few words, what you're expecting from this webinar, we're just going to start in a few seconds just to let, of course, the time for all the registrants to come in because congratulations, you are very punctual and you are very eager on time, which is very appreciated. But not everybody is as punctual as you, of course. So I'm going to wait for a few people to log in. I see the list is already increasing. And oh my God, where are my manners? Nina, hello. Adeline, hello. Very happy to be with you today. We're going to do, of course, the formal introductions in a second. But yeah, if you want to just say hi and tell us where you're logging from, do it on the chat. For example, for me, as my name suggests, I'm from Paris, logging in from Paris, as well as Adeline as well. So very happy to be here today. It's very early. Well, no, it's not early. It's 11 a.m., so it's okay. But for us, the French, it's a bit early.
And for me, I'm logging in from Stockholm today, Sweden.
Wow. Would love to be in Stockholm.
The weather is perfect here today as well, so it's really nice. I had a great week last week. So I hope everybody is enjoying some springtime as well, at least in Europe. We have been looking for that for some time.
Lovely.
Hello, Anna, Benonica, Christopher, Bertrand, Etienne. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrong. Anna. Love it. From Amsterdam, from London, from Oslo and Munich at the same time. Wow. Representing Poland, from North. Oh my God, love it. Such a diverse group. Okay, I see that a lot of people are started to join. So we are going to kickstart the conversation because we actually have a lot to cover, as you can imagine. Because as this title might suggest, there is actually quite a lot to unpack there. So let's start from the top. Hello, everybody, again, and welcome to today's Coach Up webinar: the 5 power skills that actually matter in times of uncertainty. My name is Aurélien. I am the field marketing leader for France and North America here at Coach Up, and I'll be your facilitator for this session. I'm genuinely thrilled to be with you today. Today's topic is a very big one, and we've got an incredible panel of speakers to unpack it together. So just before we get started, a quick housekeeping. Of course, in 2026, webinars feel like second nature. This is not 2020 anymore, but a quick reminder still, this session is being recorded and will be available on demand after the event, so you'll be able to catch up the replay later and share it with your team, who will get incredible FOMO for not having been there. If you have any questions, you can jump them in the question tab right next to the chat tab on the top, on the bottom right, sorry, of your screen. And some of the questions will be answered along the way if it's really part of the conversation. Otherwise, we have a dedicated time at the end of the webinar to answer all of your questions. And of course, feel free to make this session as live as possible. Feel free to react in the chat. You have messages, you have emojis, you have GIFs. You can really react with absolutely everything you want. This is an open conversation. We want this to be as interactive as possible. And as the crowd continues to join in, yes, we already started a bit to do the transition, but if you have just joined, feel free to tell us where you're watching this from right now. So again, we saw people from the UK, from the Netherlands, from Poland, from France. And it's really amazing to see so many countries represented and gathering around the same topic, which shows that this is really something very current and very international. So feel free to continue to do that in the chat. In the meantime, I will hand over to Adeline, who's Coach Up Senior Behavioral Scientist, who will be this webinar's host to do the presentations. Adeline, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Aurélien. Hello, everyone. So I'm Adeline Sego. As Aurélien said, I'm a Senior Behavioral Scientist at Coach Up. I work at the intersection of behavioral science, coaching, and transformation with a focus on how organizations build the leadership and the human capability they need, especially when the environment is moving fast. I'm particularly delighted to be joined by Nina Frentzen, Competency and Training Manager for Leadership at Mishma. Nina brings really an essential perspective from the field. So I think it's going to be a really rich conversation today on what really takes to develop leaders and managers inside a complex global organization. So my role today is going to be to share with you a couple of signals we see across coaching program, and Nina will really help us test those signals against what is happening on the ground. Nina, would you like to take a minute or so to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Adeline, and thank you for inviting me to this webinar. So, as already mentioned, my name is Nina Franzen, and I work at Michelin today. I have a background both from corporate world, but also from startup world in my past. And I really look forward to this discussion today, and also to hear from you behind the screen who is following us with some questions as well. Yeah, thank you.
Great. So I'm going to take the presentation from here. Just very briefly about Coach Hub for those of you who don't know us. Coach Hub supports organization through change, transformation, leadership by making coaching and development accessible at scale with measurable impact. So what's interesting from today's perspective is the lens that this actually gives us. Because we partner with many large enterprise, we don't just hear what companies say they need, we actually see what they actually choose to build, what they choose to invest in when it comes to skill, especially in today's time when we're dealing with a lot of uncertainty. So before we actually start and we start sharing with you some of those signals and starting the conversation, we wanted to ask you, audience, what do you think when the world is turbulent, when change is becoming the new normal? What do you see breaking first in your organization? Is it attention? Is it decision quality? Is it cooperation? So I believe there is a little poll window that came up. So please answer, give us some insight into what you see maybe breaking first in your organization. We cannot see the poll anymore. Let's see if we can bring it up, but feel free to also provide your answer into the chat. Do you think it's attention? Do you think it's decision quality? Do you think it's cooperation?
If you go to the poll section on the right, normally you can see the poll. I see that. Do you see the results, Adeline, or do you want me to display them?
It would be great if you can, Aurélien, display them.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
I think it'd be interesting for the audience to see.
We're getting 47% on decision quality, 50% on decision quality, which is clearly getting the major part of the votes. 25% attention, 25% cooperation. Yeah, definitely decision quality that is getting the most traction.
Okay, great. Keep all of that in mind, because I think you will see these are themes that will come in this conversation. Great. Okay. Super. All right. Moving on, just to give a little bit of insight where some of the signal I will be sharing today are coming from. Those are insight based on 1596 coaching program created using our Coach Hub framework. So just so you know, this isn't a survey. This is not aspiration and hopes and dream. These are actual revealed preferences, which means what HR, business, change management priority are expressed through real program design decision. These data is across 15 months and about 400 global clients, enterprise clients. So it's really about, this matters because it reflects what organizations believe will help them survive and evolve through uncertainty. So very quickly and without further ado, the four signals we're going to talk about today are, and that Nina, we're really excited to get Nina's view on all of them, is we're really going to walk you through what skills organization prioritize, who they invest in, where the paradox sits, and how this connects to business outcome. So the first one is the skill stack that hold under pressure. So, and that was very much the title of this webinar. So the top, what we call focus area, or think about behavioral skills, that are selected when company design coaching program are communication, strategic thinking, growth mindset, performance, and managing complexity and uncertainty. So I think what's really incredibly consistent and quite surprising is that in uncertain environments, right, organizations aren't actually chasing futuristic skills. They are really strengthening, or what I would call like the fundamental, right, the basic under pressure. It's really about investing really in those fundamentals, right? So that list of 5 skills answer really a first question, which is, how do we keep human aligned and moving when the environment is unstable? I begin to ask our audience first, like, are you surprised by this? The skill set of 5, is there anyone in particular that resonates with you? Is it communication? Is it strategic thinking, growth mindset, performance, or managing complexity and uncertainty? So as you answer, I think it becomes clear that it's really not about adding shiny new competency, and we will talk about some of them a little bit later. It's really more about reinforcing what prevents performance from collapsing when things get messy. Okay, somebody talks about transversal collaboration. Great. Okay. Before we get into Nina's point of view, wanted to share what we see, and that's where Nina will be keen to hear your thoughts, is that stack of 5 skills really tells us what leaders, somebody talk about adaptability, what leaders are being asked to do in times of uncertainty. Communication creates alignment, strategic thinking gives us that clarity, growth mindset sustains that learning speed, performance keeps execution consistent, and managing complexity keeps leaders steady in that ambiguity. So it's really about clarity, alignment, execution, adaptation. So it's really about, how do we avoid chaos? How do we keep the business from moving? So there is a strong practicality really in those choices. So it's not designing for hype, it's really about like, how do we operate when the system is under stress? So Nina, now I'm keen to hear from you and your perspective. When you look at the stack, does this reflect what you're seeing, or what your leaders are actually and managers may be struggling with the day-to-day? Or if you see anything else that might resonate or not with the skill stack?
Yeah, I think it resonates well with my experience, my own experience with what I can see, as well as that all of the skills and what's mentioned here is, I think, also a bit natural in the world we live in today, where things are very uncertain. There are changes all the time around us. We don't really know what's coming. We can't predict the future as well as in the past, at least. And we are kind of expecting things to be disrupted and be changed. And it's not a human skill that we are great at. We were not really built for that type of environment, right? As humans. So our heads and also our whole body is a bit struggling in this type of environment. And I think it's natural to try to manage that environment in some certain way. So you want to create clarity, right? You want to be able to speed up, to be in the same speed as everyone else. You would rather want to be in the front line, right? You want to be driving everything. You want as well to be able to show that you're performing, to show that you're creating results, to show that you are growing. And I think all of this is a natural kind of human need that we have when things are very uncertain. And it's a natural thing that we want to try to manage it. We want to try to control it. We want to find ways to make it more clear and more easy to understand, let's say. So for me, it resonates quite well when I see this. Yeah.
Great. You said something very interesting about it. It's very natural there is a human need to deal with uncertainty, to try to manage, to control, but it doesn't always feel, it doesn't feel natural also to deal with so much uncertainty and changes constantly. Out of curiosity, if you had to focus on just one or two of those capabilities or others this year to really move the needle, which one would you prioritize and why?
I would really highlight the middle one you have here, which also have a different color, so it really stands out. But for me, it stands so it's the growth mindset. And I think this is maybe one of the most important thing. And it's sometimes, yes, it's a skill because you can teach yourself to have a growth mindset. You can practice it. You can grow that muscle to be even better. So it is a skill that you can practice, but it's also a mindset. It's said in the word, right? So you have to take a choice as well. You have to take a liberated choice that I'm going to grow. I'm going to uh, relearn. I'm gonna all the time be curious about new things and so on. Because the main, I would say, competitive advantage nowadays is that you are learning faster than the world around you is changing. And since the speed is just going faster and faster with the change, it means that we have to learn faster and faster as well, which means that we will fail a lot, right? When you have to learn this fast, you will fail a lot. That won't feel very great. Um, and I think this is also something that might be, people might be a bit cautious about wanting to learn in the speed which is required today, is that it will also require a lot of winning, but also a lot of failing. And we need to just be up for that. Yeah. So that would be my priority, would be growth mindset for sure.
Great. Thank you so much. I love what you spoke about, like making deliberate choices, setting that intention to relearn, to be curious. Also, you spoke about like accept in a way that we are gonna fail when we have to learn as fast as, or try to keep up learning as fast as the environment around us is changing. I think those are super, I mean, very interesting and rich, I think, food for thought points. Which makes me think about when you and I were actually talking and preparing for this webinar, you said something very interesting about the importance of ownership, and I would love for you to share your perspective on that with the audience.
Yeah, I think this is also today, since things are so uncertain. There is no leaders. No, if you look at companies today, there is no leader who know what the future will look like. There is no one who has access to all data, who can be, the one who can give us the answer to what the future will be or what's the right thing to do next. Which means that it's kind of a collectiveness that needs to come in together, because we all need to be able to try to predict the future. And if we're going to predict the future together, or try at least to go where the future is taking us, and kind of join that ride, everybody needs to take that ownership. So everybody needs to be a leader. We hear that a lot. But for me, it's about ownership. So I take ownership of leading the transformation. So I take the ownership of making sure that the future will look like something I believe in, or something that I think is a good future, or something I think is the right thing to do. And everybody needs to step up and take that ownership, because if you don't do that, and be part of the change, and leading the change, you will be changed by somebody else or something else. So if you want to be able to be part of creating the change, for me, the ownership is extremely important, and that's also mindset and the decision, liberated decision you have to take. Yeah.
Love that. And I cannot help thinking about the link of ownership in when we talk about coaching, right? It's about being the creator of your own destiny in a way. It's either you're gonna let outside circumstances dictate, your future, your present, what you're dealing with, or you can choose to take like an active role in your own day-to-day and destiny in a way, rather than being personally or professionally.
Yeah, it's about what we heard before. It's about you disrupt or you will be disrupted. It's like that. And this goes very fast. So I think it's the most important is that you take this decision, and you step up, and it will demand some sort of courage. So it's kind of the right time to be showing a bit of courage. Yeah.
Love that. Like either you're gonna be part of the disruption or you're gonna be disrupted. And courage, the importance of courage this day.
Yeah.
Love that. We certainly, Nina, I could be talking about this for a long time, but I think it's about, we need to move to the next signal, which is about what we call the tipping point population. And really what we mean by that is when we looked at all the coaching program being created within our universe, we saw that more than a third of program were very much dedicated to the middle managers. It's really the top target group. So in my point of view, but again, keen to hear yours, is for me, it makes sense because they are actually the one that translates strategy into behavior. They absorb the pressure from above, but also the emotion from below. They're sort of like the shock absorber, right? Like, so really when we think about the skill that needs to be scaled, we really need to design program rather than being coaching, training, any form of development. We really need to think about middle managers, not just the top leaders or the high potential. So in essence, I would say the future skill agenda is really a middle manager agenda. So I'm curious to see, Nina, what you think about this, and the audience as well. Tell us if this is something that surprises you. But Nina, yes, what do you think about the role of middle managers in especially in this particular context and in investing in them?
Yeah, I think it's super important. They are the ones who are closest to our employees, where the action happens. And sometimes, maybe our organization which are pretty flat. So it's I would also say frontline manager. So the manager is really in front of our employees on a day-to-day basis. And these people are super important. And often they're a bit squeezed in between, strategy and operations. And they report two ways, right? If we use very old fashioned, but upwards or downwards, they really have two ways, and two kind of wills to please. So they often squeezed in the middle, but the most important is that they are so close to the employees, and that's where all the information sits. That's where all the skills are. That's where all the knowledge is. That's where everything happens. And to invest in these managers, I believe, is very important. And what we also can see from a lot of studies is that under pressure, people tend to default to old habits, right? So when it's really pressure and so on, we really go back to old habits. And what research shows is that if leaders really are working on how you show up, so how, you're being a role model, that helps people to, in very stressful times, to choose the right behaviors, to choose the right things to do. It calms down, it creates trust around them, and it creates this kind of feeling that that you are able to do the right thing. So I think it's extremely important as well that we know that the middle managers are really also showing the way. So they need to also be role models, showing the right behavior, showing the right what is the right thing to do. Let's say, basically.
Great. Like you spoke about the notion of mid managers are role models in a way. Like it's about helping people choose the right behavior. If you behave a certain way, you're gonna create that sense of calm, be a reference in a way. Somebody in the chat, thank you, Ben, is talking about also, I love that. Although leaders are not fortune tellers, they need to communicate the mission clearly, which I think will apply also to those mid-manager we're talking about. The importance of communicating a mission really clearly so people are, can actually exercise their own discretion. And going back to your point, Nina, model and really choose the right behavior or the right course of action. If we stay with those mid-manager, what's one thing you think, Nina, organization should do differently tomorrow to better support the middle managers? Is there anything in particular you think, for example, that they need the most, but that maybe they're not getting?
Well, what I see, or my experience, and also hearing a lot when I'm in, settings like this where you talk with people and from different places, is that I hear basically the same thing said from many, and this is that the middle managers are super overloaded. They are very busy. They have a lot on their table. They are fully occupied with the operational tasks. And they sometimes maybe even more part of the team than leading the team. And in these situations, I think it's difficult for a middle manager to find time for their own reflection, their own growth, investing in their own development. And I think what we can do as organizations or support functions is to make sure that there is time for that, so that they have time for reflection, they have time for their own development. And we can't always or trust that they will take time, they will prioritize it, because when things are 150% on the table, it is difficult to find this time for reflection and learning. And I think this is something we should be aware of and help them to find that time.
Great. So for organization to be really supportive and encourage them to actually take that time for reflection for their own development.
Yeah.
Great. Super. Thank you. Again, I see the time, so we're gonna slowly move towards the third signal, which is what I like to call the soft skill paradox, right? So earlier I presented the top 5 skills that are being selected and invested in, essentially when HR L&D managers make decision in designing in this case coaching program. But I thought it would be interesting also for our audience and for our conversation to look at actually which behavioral skills or which what we call focus area in our world are actually being the least selected when we look at data over the past 15 months. And I think that's what I mean by paradox, because if you look at them, you're going to see optimism, mindfulness, self-esteem, creativity, empathy, and surprisingly, maybe to some is, and usually that's where we get reaction when we talk to client about this, is let's not forget they are the least selected one, right? But least selected does not mean they're the least needed, right? Because if you, and I'm sure many of you have attended to many leadership panels, right? And that's what a lot of leaders actually talk about, or speakers, like, oh, the importance of, mindfulness and creativity. But the reality and what we see is those are, in essence, the least invested in by company. But I think there are really a reason for that. I think that when the organization gets under pressure, they just tend to be deprioritized. So I think there is some simple dynamics at play here. Is one is what I would call the label bias, right? Like empathy could sound soft, whereas communication, for example, sound a little bit more business critical. The other bias, I think, is the urgency bias, right? Like under pressure, like company wants to fund what feels immediately productive, right? Like clarity, execution, delivery. But what I think it's important to say is those skills don't disappear, right? They just get reframed and sometimes hidden inside more, I would say, business acceptable languages. So, but the broader pattern here is that under pressure, organization will fund what feels instrumental and underinvest what feels more like execution, human execution, right? I'm curious to see, Nina, if you see it in your world, and it might be very different, right? Do you see this tension in practice, right? That some of those skills are widely valued, but they are really harder to prioritize when it comes to actually designing L&D initiative?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of skills which are very difficult to measure. You know, we live in a world today where we want to be able to see data, real time, very quickly. So and everything goes super fast. And I think that sometimes we need to look up from that data. I mean, I really believe in the digital transformation and the power of data that we have. But I also believe that um, sometimes you just need to look up from the data and observe what's happening around you. So you can often see things like, for instance, creativity, empathy, and so on, uh, more if you observe what's going on around you in your organization. So look at what people are doing, look at how they are behaving, look at how they're communicating with each other, look at what they are doing. And I think as well that having this human observation is as much important as looking at data to be able to see if you are having a change in your organization or not. And some of these things are easier to observe, I would say, than to actually measure with data. Of course, you can do it with certain things, and there is a lot of L&D initiatives that you can do with many of these topics. And I think also some of the topics might need to be, let's say, more a push approach than a pull approach. Because some of the skills that we know is super important for our maybe organization to be successful in the future, or it's important for us to be able to be successful with our transformations. If we know some of these skills are majorly important, we might also need to push it sometimes. It doesn't always need to come from the pull effect. Even if I am a strong believer that if you're going to learn as a human, you need to be motivated and engaged in the learning. And you need to have your own willingness to learn. Otherwise, a push to learning is never the best one.
Great. I love this concept that you're bringing about push learning versus pull learning. Also, what you're saying is equally like those skills are important and they're probably easier to observe than actually measure. And that's maybe when it comes about to selection, right? That they could be really, I don't want to say difficult. It might be difficult to measure, right? That they feel maybe less tangible. That doesn't mean again they're not important. And what you mentioned is about sometimes it's actually better to have like a bit of this push approach or pull approach. It does not need to come from that pull effect, right? Like and when you say push, am I hearing like the organization, the managers, like the peer, right? They all have a role to play also in maybe influencing in a way, like to your point earlier, when you observe somebody displaying certain behavior, displaying that empathy, a sense of creativity, this optimism, that's also encourage someone to maybe have that willingness to also be like, hey, let me actually be more empathetic. Let me show more mindfulness in my interaction with people. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And also I think feedback is super important on this type of skills, that you know, people don't do what you say, but they do what you do. So it's of course about that role modeling again, but it's also about giving feedback, because we say always when we raise kids, right? We say that if you really highlight and give feedback about the positive things, that's going to be what you will see more of. So as more you focus on giving feedback on positive behavior, as more of that behavior you will see. And I think this is also important, that is that when you look around you in the organization or wherever type of context you're in, and you see good behavior in terms of empathy or optimism and so on, give a positive feedback, because that will grow it even more. It's an easy way to grow that behavior more.
Love that, like the importance of providing feedback, positive feedback, right? Like to your point, when you see actually positive behavior, it's important to provide that feedback, because that's gonna ultimately it's like this virtuous effect, right? Like the more you can actually comment on, hey, You had a great attitude today. I love like how you dealt with the situation. That's gonna encourage more of that positive behavior.
Yeah.
Super great. Key, if we continue the conversation on the soft skill paradox, right? And I spoke about the least selected focus area in program design. Something else that we saw that is interesting is actually shift in more other skills or focus area being added on to actually program design. So that I saw was something interesting to share with you for our conversation and of course to our audience. And if you look at what actually gets added is change agility, I think no surprise here in the current context, conflict management, collaboration, that's critical thinking and psychological safety. Why it's important to say that is because ultimately 1 out of 4 program effectively like changed or added those additional one or many of those additional focus area. So it's a very different list we're looking at the moment, right? They are not necessarily nice to have leadership thing. To me, when I'm looking at them, I really think of risk management skills when you're dealing with uncertainty, with change, with transformation. They're the skills in a way that almost prevents things from breaking down, right? Confusion, mistrust, avoidance, poor decision. Of course, maybe I'm a little bit biased here because I think the most underestimated one is that conflict management, right? Because in my view, if you can't handle conflict, you cannot really execute on change. So for me, conflict management is almost like performance management. So the shift we are seeing, and going back from what we spoke about earlier, is priorities in those contexts are really shifting from aspirational leadership to what I would call operational resilience. So companies are expected to design development initiative for the real tension leaders face. So keen again to hear from the audience what you think about those skills that are coming back as very important in the current context. And of course, Nina, keen to hear your perspective from the field. If those resonate with you, if this is something you see coming up more in the last 6 or 12 months, any thoughts you had on that particular stack?
Yeah, I think this also makes sense. I think as well, when and specifically my at least reflection and experience is that when people are coaching, it's a journey, right? So you might have a thought, and I experienced myself as well when I had coaching, is that you think in the beginning that you want to work on certain things, and then when the coach helps you to deep dive into certain areas, you will kind of uncover other areas which are more important, right? Or kind of maybe the root cause of what you're struggling with certain elements. So I'm not very surprised that it might change the focus during a process like that. And I think, for instance, conflict management, which you mentioned, a lot of people think about conflict as something negative because it's difficult for humans to handle that. But I think that if, for instance, between two people or if even in a team, if you experience conflict, you should actually celebrate, because a conflict is just a signal that you're about to get better at something, because it means that something has, floated up to the surface, that it's not working, or it's wrong way of doing things anymore. We should change, or we got a new perspective in the group, or whatever it could be. It's just a signal that now we can expect things to be better, because we just need to have that difficult discussion first, and then things will get better. So I think it's also something we as humans should start to see much more positive than difficult and negative. And in a lot of change in the environment we live in today, where things are changing all the time, there will be just more and more conflicts. And that's what we see around us in the world as well. What's happening? There will be just more and more conflict as more and more change we will have. And we need to see that more positively. And we need to address it in a more positive way. That's my own belief, at least. And then I think this psychological safety, for instance, the irony is often that both trust or psychological safety and also reflection is the first things that disappear in uncertainty. So even, even if research and everything are saying that these are the most important things for us to be successful in transformation and change, it's the first things that goes away normally when it's uncertain. And I think that if we're very aware of that, and if we try to really work on it, that would make a huge difference. So that maybe also be something that will be revealed during a process that these things becomes important.
Love your perspective. The first one on like conflict, and I think that's something for our audience to ponder and think about, right? And then I will wholeheartedly agree. Like conflict is usually avoided, whereby if you as try to stick true to your word, something that should actually be celebrated, because it is a signal that there is new perspective coming up, that we are expecting for something better to happen. I would even say like it's an opportunity to grow, right? Conflict should be like, hey, this is actually your signal that there is an opportunity here to grow, to learn, to do things better, maybe differently than this has been done. But like you said, like as human, we want to avoid the difficult conversation, but actually going through, not avoiding and handling and having those difficult conversations, this is what's going to then result in doing things differently, like moving into a new direction, finding better ways to work together. So I love that whole point on the conflict being really an opportunity for growth and for that better is coming. You spoke also about the psychological safety, which is very much associated with trust, and how this is actually the first thing that tend to disappear in times of uncertainties, that trust, right? So not surprising that company sees that. Probably, hey, we are in a time of massive change, of chaos, even like, instability. We see trust, disappearing, maybe employees disengages, like, oh, super important to ask of our people, or for us to create that safe environment, that psychologically safe environment, so people can feel they can rebuild that trust somehow again. Awesome. Great. Again, I see, wow, time is going by fast. Moving to the next point, I'm going to quickly check some of the question here as well. Before we move, somebody spoke about the middle manager. So Oscar asked, if we focus on middle manager, but senior manager are not also being coached to develop those skills, are we not creating a risk for mid manager to feel an imbalance on expectation? Key, Nina, for you to take a first stab at this question.
I think that it's important to have everybody involved in transformation process or change process, and also learning and so on. There isn't somebody who should be able to get more of it than others, of course. And I think as well that it is extremely important in terms of role modeling that senior leaders are as well also relearning and having that growth mindset and learn every day as well. Because nobody today can kind of stay where they are and base their future on the experience and expertise they have today. So I think that it is super important, and also a good question. I think that if we kind of expect or demand from our middle management that they should spend time in learning, of course we should have the exact same expectation on senior leaders. That's at least my belief, is that it has to be the same for everybody. But I think in the past it was often, for instance, if you talk specifically about coaching, it was something given often to senior leaders and not to middle management. And I think this we at least what I can see around is that coaching tends to be more accessible for more people in all places in the organization, and I think that that's a great thing that happens, for instance.
I agree, and just to echo what you said effectively is, I think we're not saying that, hey, we shouldn't invest in the senior manager, the leadership. Yes, absolutely we should, but I think what we seeing more recently is beyond just addressing the top of the pyramid, I would say, like we see now, and I think it's very encouraging, more and more companies realizing, oh, we shouldn't just invest in the top. We need to actually start going down some of those layers. Hence why I think we're seeing a surge, I would say, in more middle managers program, right? Just quickly going through the question. Apologies because I didn't see them before, so I want to make sure we address some of them. We will have time, of course, at the end to address everything that hasn't been addressed. Christopher talked about meaning that we work at our best when we invent ourselves, when we cooperate in the service of humankind. And this is totally missing in most hierarchical organizations. So I think this echoes very much the conversation we had earlier about, role modeling, the willingness to change. I think weaving some of those pieces, right, like empathy, the importance of empathy, of creating that psychological safety. Is there anything, Nina, you might want to comment on when it comes to this particular comments?
I think I love the comment, and I really also believe that when you work in service of others, so you're there for the people. So basically, your mission is to be there for the people around you. It is, of course, extremely important that you have a growth mindset in terms of having the right skills for being a support for other people. So you're there in service of others. And you need to be cautious about, okay, what skills do I need to be in good service of others? So, and of course, that is a lot of soft skills that you will need to have, but it's also a lot of role modeling and mindset, I would say, that is there. And I think today, if you look at leadership many years ago, I would say that a little bit what I can see shifted in terms of leaders is how available you are for your people. I think if you would just grow that time of availability that you give to the people you serve, that would be a huge difference.
Yeah. Great, thank you, Nina. We're gonna move towards the fourth signal, so then we can have more time for all the questions that were not answered, or any comments the audience might have. And the last point is, if we step back from the signal, right, even though that is a signal very much on its own, the question becomes, but how does all this, everything we're talking about now, is actually connecting to business outcome, right? And I think that's probably one, at least from my perspective, one of the biggest shifts we're seeing is organizations are no longer satisfied with leadership development, say coaching, training, L&D as an activity. It really needs to translate into execution, right? And this is where often, like, I think some of the initiative might break down, like, they might diagnose skill, they might define competency, but they really struggle to translate that into tangible behavior change, right? Especially when that environment is complex and moving fast. So I think the question here is really identifying what looks good, right? And activated where it matters. Something that I always like to bring up, and I know certainly, Nina, you and I had this conversation, and I had many of those conversations lately, is I think before we move to designing any form of program, rather than being coaching, training, or any form of development, right? I think companies really need to start thinking about the bigger pictures and see how those initiatives really start tying and linking back to those concrete business, company challenges, priorities, what I would call value creation, right? Like we see more and more shift towards what we call the skill-based organization, but it's really about, hey, what are those business priorities? Therefore, what are the behavior we want to encourage and grow? And how do we measure all of that, right? How do we measure that particular coaching initiative, training initiative had an impact on a concrete, positive outcome on the team, on the individual, the team, but also the organization. So some of the questions that I always encourage clients to think about is the context and the priorities, right? What is currently changing? Why do we want to put together an initiative right now? Who needs to benefit from that shift, right? Who needs to be part of that particular program? What good looks like, meaning what are the behavior we actually want to encourage? What are some of the skills we want to develop? And all of that will feed into them, like, in this case, we're talking about coaching, like the sequencing and the support, right? Do we want to have managers involved? Do we want to have tripartite? Do we want to have regular checking? Do we want to focus on maybe working on self-awareness first before we start, talking about resilience, performance, like, maybe speaking in public, dealing with conflict, etc. But all of that needs to somehow, again, link back to that business, right? We need to prove, more and more company now, like, hey, it's great, I want to invest in this, but I need to also prove to my upper management that actually this is impactful. This has a real impact on business. So what we see more and more is this, and as a way to measure, even though it's not like a clear, it's very difficult to measure, but there are ways to actually track whether, somebody's behavior has changed, 180, 360, before a program, after a program, also looking at, feasible, tangible people and organization KPI. Do we see that retention, engagement is actually higher for that population that benefited from that initiative versus a population that didn't? So that's the point that we really wanted to bring up to the audience, like the importance more and more to actually link some of those initiatives to that value creation. So I'm really curious, Nina, from your perspective, how important is that for you, for Michelin, for yourself, for what you've seen, also talking to colleagues in the field? How important is it to link those development to those business KPI? And I imagine, where is that the hardest or the easiest in practice?
Yes, and it's a really good question, and it's a very relevant question. As you say, it's something that it's talked about a lot, because in the world we live in today, we like data. We like to see quick results, and we like to see the results in clear data. And it's also a requirement in terms of learning. I think it's something we all see. And I think we talk a lot about the return on investment. I think rate of learning is better. So how fast can you learn what's required from the outside? So that, if it was possible to measure that, that would be a great measurement. What you can do, I think, of course, you should, at least my own experience on measuring and data and so on, is that take benefit of everything that you have, but link it to strategy, link it to other KPIs in the organization, so that there is a connection between the learning and other areas that you want to achieve or you want to see performance in. But when we talk about behavioral change, that is a long process. It's a long-term process. So I think it's important as well to have the alignment within all the people in the organization, that it's nothing that we will have data. We won't have data in 2 weeks about what's happening over here. What we might be able to see is this and that. Is there a way to have an iterative data so that we can see that we are going in the right direction, and we can adjust if we see that we are not on the right path, for instance? That's great. So if there is possible to have leading indicators, that's great. It's not easy to find them, but it's greater if you can do that. But I absolutely think that behavioral change is nothing that happens quickly. If it's not, you're confronted with a trauma, or you have deep love, or something very, very big happening to you, humans don't have quick behavioral change. It's normally not happening. We need to be, aware that it's like that. It's a long-term process. But I also think sometimes that we try to do too much. So I think in organization as well, we should practice this thing called focus, right? So if you choose, like, what's important now, what do we need to do now? What's the most important skills that we need to acquire to be in front of the change that's happening around us? And if we can try to focus on that, I think as well we will see more results as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Nina. Like, the importance of setting expectation within the organization, that behavioral change is going to take time, and to be very realistic, I think, about what could be those lagging indicator, but maybe those leading indicator first, right? It's like, hey, to your point, change is not going to happen over 2 weeks, right? So making sure that everybody across the organization is aware, managing those expectations, that change is going to take time, but it is going to translate into some benefits for the organization.
And I think it is important for learning initiatives on behavior that it is a journey, because you need to follow people's transformation or change or growth over time. You can't just have a two days workshop and then good luck and we hope everybody's doing whatever they need to do. Because when changes really happen is that when they practice them in real moments of discomfort. So and when they are there practicing those things in real discomfort, you need to be there supporting that to go in the right direction. So it's a journey for sure.
Thank you, Nina. I see we coming to the end of time, and this is going to be the right time anyway for Q&A. So we will review some of the questions in the chat that maybe we didn't get a chance to answer. Aurélie, I don't know if you want to come in, but I'm happy to talk about this. We encourage you to, you can click on the link that will appear on the chat if you want to download, hear more about some of the point, of course, we spoke about it here, like the leadership reset, why traditional models fell, and how coaching rebuilds execution. So we encourage you to download our guide so you can get a little bit more insight into, how to support those process of transformation and upskill the team. So I think you should have all seen a link popping up on your screen. And we can now move to Q&A. So I'm going to go through the question in the chat and see if there is some that we didn't get a chance to answer. Would you assimilate operational resilience to robustness, where our traditional performance like productivity, profitability, efficiency becomes secondary to maintain stability and adaptability in the long term? I don't know, Nina, if you have a view on this.
For me, resilience really resonate differently for different people, I think. What does it mean, resilience? And for me personally, what resilience means is that in stressful situations, so when there is a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, I'm fully aware, like everybody else, that when I'm stressed, I will go deeply into behaviors like trying to control things. So I will go into control, give very direct instructions. I want feedback very quickly and so on. And to be fully aware that that's how I'm going to behave when I get stressed, and try to practice in unstressful situation to behave differently when this happens. And for me, that is resilience. Leaders who can really not, go in a different direction and behaving in this control manner when it's very stressful, that's really resilience. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Nina. Someone asked, actually, towards the beginning of the webinar, big question, actually. How do you define transformation? It is a buzzword, and I think many people don't really understand it. And also a comment about, I think that what most companies are missing, I think that's when we ask, hey, what do you think are some of the skills that are important, is the evolutionary intelligence. So I could certainly have an answer, but Nina, keen to give you the stage. And how would you define transformation, and what do you think about this skill as evolutionary intelligence?
Yeah, it's a great point, I think. And transformation for me can be very much different things. It can be something that happens because the world around you changes. You're kind of forced to transform, basically. It comes from disruption. But transformation can also be something you want to lead, right? You maybe want to lead the transformation. And these two different situations it often needs to be handled differently. Because if you want to lead a transformation, you're more in the possibility of planning it and leading it and structurizing it and also measure it. If you're part of more being disrupted, it's responding to crisis, right? So it's crisis management. And for me, these different ways is also to understanding what type of transformation are we in, and what's the right behaviors and what's the right things to do for us to manage the transformation. Yeah, so my first thoughts.
Beautiful. We slowly, well, we are coming at this, happened really fast. So I think we addressed most of the question. Thank you so much, Nina, for your time today. Like this was super insightful. I think you and I could have continued this discussion probably for another hour easily. Oh, well, thank you, Aurelia. If any of you out there want to see how coaching can actually drive that real business value we're talking about for your organization, get in touch with us. And I think this is what will close the webinar. Of course, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, to book a meeting with us. And I see Aurelien is back, so maybe you might want to have a closing thought. But Nina, thank you again so much. I knew this will be super insightful, and I'm sure it's been for audience. Love our conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here. And I'm super happy for all of you who joined and all the good questions. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Adeline and Nina. Yeah, you stole my words, Adeline, but thank you for starting to close early. So if you already like to rewatch parts of today's discussion, the on-demand version will be available by tomorrow using the same link and will be sent to you also through email. And it's just, if you still have questions or if you want to go deeper and you want to talk to us about your challenges, you can hit the get in touch button in the links section to connect with our team. We would love to keep the conversation going. And with that, seeing the time, yes, that's a wrap. So again, yes, thank you so much, Adeline and Nina, for the rich insights, and to all of you for joining us today. Whether it's the morning, the afternoon, or the evening, wherever you are, we hope you leave inspired. And until next time, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn because we organize a lot of webinars and publish a lot of content throughout the year to help you in your day-to-day and to support your people within transformations in uncertain times like this. So yeah, that's a wrap. Have a very good day and see you at the next Coach Up webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.